Alright, it's time for another update and forecast on the California wildfires. Over the last few days, we've actually had a little bit of a break. We've had some nice calming behavior on both the Caldor and the Dixie Fire. Just looking at the satellite imagery right now, you could barely even tell where those fires are because there's so little smoke coming off them. Maybe a little bit of smoke coming off the Dixie earlier today. But right when we were starting to get comfortable with wildfires in California, it looked like we were going to be getting a little bit of a break. Some warm, dry conditions came in this afternoon, and we have, unfortunately, some new flare-ups, some new fires to talk about, including the Hopkins Fire, which is just west of Lake Mendocino. You can see a little bit of that smoke puffing up right here. We have a number of new lightning fires that started with that round of thunderstorms that came through. You can see some of that smoke in the southern Sierras. We've got that, so that's being called the Paradise Fire, the Colony Fire. We have a number of other new ones that we need to talk about, and then you can also see that it appears the McCash Fire, the River Complex, and possibly the Monument Fire as well all seem to be flaring up right now too. So we had a little bit of a break. We are going to have some good news to go over when it comes to the Caldor and the Dixie Fire, but then later in this video, we're going to really start to dive into the new fires, especially the Hopkins, Paradise, Colony, and I believe the other one is the Windy Fire. We're going to have to really look into those ones, and those are all ongoing, developing situations right now. That's why I'm actually saving those towards later in the video so that there's more time for information to come out, so that there's more for me to present once we get to covering those fires in real time. But first, I do just want to go over the Caldor Fire and the Dixie Fire first. I know doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on there, but those are the top stories that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. And as you can see, on the top 20 largest wildfires in the history of California, those are still the number 2 and number 15 largest wildfires that we've had in California, and they are still burning. Although it doesn't look like there's much smoke coming off them right now, they are still burning, so we are going to look at all the updates there, but again, mostly good news coming out of those areas. But then we also see that the Monument and the River Complex are on this top 20 largest California wildfires list as well. And those appear to be a bit more active today than the Caldor and Dixie. You can see those up farther up into Northern California. I believe the McCash is that one farthest up into Northern California, so we'll be looking at those as well. But again, first we're looking at the Caldor and Dixie because not only are those the largest, those are also in the top 20 most destructive wildfires. So first thing we're going to do is just quickly as quickly as we can, go over the information for those two fires, and then we're going to dive into some of the new ones and see what kind of information we can find on the new fires that are flaring up right now, including the Hopkins, Colony, the Paradise Fire, Windy Fire, whichever fires that seem the most important to go over. We'll find as much information as we can later in the video. But first, I do just want to dive into the Caldor Fire because, again, this was the one I would say was one of the scariest wildfire situations that I've personally done update and forecast for. Again, I'm still relatively new to this. I just started doing these update and forecast videos last year. I covered the entire 2020 wildfire season and all of this season so far, and I would say the Caldor Fire, as it came just north of Kirkwood and just south of South Lake Tahoe and on both sides of Christmas Valley, I would say this was one of the most critical wildfire situations that I've personally seen. So that's part of the reason I'm going over this one first, is because I'm so happy to see barely any smoke coming off of the Caldor Fire at all anymore. I paused that right there for a second because there might be one little instant where you see a little bit of smoke coming off right there, and don't get me wrong, there is still some hot spots on the fire, but most of the news that I've seen coming out of the Caldor Fire recently has been all good news. Just looking at the hot spots, something I usually look for. Well, first, I look for hotspots. You can barely even see them on this map. Most of them are in that area right there, underneath the fire perimeter. And the key point I'll make is, when you see those hotspots mostly underneath the fire perimeter, that means there hasn't been a lot of growth recently. On the days where the Caldor Fire was really taking off, we were seeing large amounts of hotspots outside of the fire perimeter. So that's one indication that the situation has calmed down, and calmed down significantly compared to what we were seeing last Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when we had that red flag warning and it was rushing straight towards South Lake Tahoe. So right there, that you can actually see those hotspots a little bit better with those red stars right there. That is where we still have seen some activity going on in the Caldor Fire, but again, mostly good news coming out of this one. You can see where Kirkwood is right here. The fire has remained to the north of Kirkwood, although we have still continued to see some hot spots on this finger right here. And then you can also see, if we go up to Christmas Valley, it never ended up going actually through the valley. It remained on both sides of that, and it remained out of South Lake Tahoe as well. When I show the containment map, that's where some really good news comes out. We've picked up some containment in some key places on the Caldor Fire. And before I show that good news, I'll show this good news. I know we did see a little smoke coming off it in that satellite imagery, just a little bit. But if we look at the current heat detections, we're not, so it is picking up one little heat detection now. It wasn't picking that up about 30 minutes ago when I checked. So again, we do still have that one spot right there where we do have some of those hot spots still going on. But compared to this time last week, Caldor Fire looks much, much better. This time last week, we had huge hot spots all around South Lake Tahoe. Kirkwood had a pretty scary situation as well. So much better situation on Caldor right now than we were seeing previously. Although, do still have a little heat going on there. So I know I'm mostly going to be saying good news as we go over the Caldor Fire, but don't get me wrong, the fire is still certainly going, and as we've seen on wildfires throughout the season, you can never really count them out. All it really takes is one windy day, one warm day, one dry day, and then the fire can flare back up again. That was certainly something that we saw in the Dixie Fire about a month ago, where it looked like we had the northern section of the Dixie Fire wrapped up, and then all of a sudden it grew 15 miles in one day. So I'm certainly going to be keeping an eye on the Caldor Fire. It just seems like over the last couple of days, mostly good news coming out of it. So when it comes to the acreage burned, again, they might update this number in about an hour, but not expecting any large increases in that acreage burned. Right now it's 219,000 acres, and you notice that hasn't changed very much in the last 4 or 5 days. To drive that point home, we can look at the fire progression map. Where you see that blue color, that's where the fire first started, and that purple color on the 15th and 16th, that was when it grew from about 5,000 acres to 60,000 acres in one day. That was one of the most critical wildfire days of the season when it took off through Grizzly Flats. Some of the footage that we were looking at in real time when that was happening, some of the smoke plumes coming off, it was some of the most extreme fire behavior that we've seen this year. But since then, most of the growth has been to the northeast. The reason for that is the predominant wind direction has been from the southwest, and especially during that one red flag warning, we had those strong southwesterly winds, and you can see how that pushed the fire directly to the northeast, right up towards South Lake Tahoe, and then also right up north of Kirkwood. Those were the critical situations we were following, but you notice that's in that orange color. That was maybe the 30th and the 31st. Now that we've gone into maybe the 9th, 10th, and 11th, where you look for that dark red burgundy color, you notice how much less growth it appears. Still see some of that burgundy color on the northern side of the map here, and that area where we currently are seeing some of that heat detection, but much, much less growth than when you compare it with those days where it was taking off. I believe in some cases it says how many acres burned. Yeah, there was a number of days there where it was burning 20,000 acres on the 29th. On the 26th, it burned 11,000 acres. And then 30th, 31st, it burned over 10,000 acres. So we had a few days in a row there that were burning over 10,000 acres. But recently, you can see on the 10th, it said it burned 0 acres. I believe that might have just been because they didn't have any flights that day to pick up new fire perimeter data, but yesterday it showed just 641 acres additional burn. So certainly calming down in behavior and decelerating in growth when it comes to the Caldor Fire. Now, when it comes to the containment, you can see we are up to 65%. To see where that containment has taken place, most of it is on the entire western half of the fire. Although, again, that doesn't mean the fire is totally wrapped up there. You still have some hot spots. They do some mop up. And this northern edge, I know they're going in and clearing out a lot of the dead trees, because anytime it gets windy, a lot of those trees that have been damaged by the fire can just easily fall over. So they have to clear a lot of those out before it can be safe to move people back in. And then, no surprise, where we still have that uncontained area is where we still have seen the recent growth just north of Twin Bridges on that part of the fire, where we saw a little bit of that recent growth, and then also where that heat detection was popping up recently just north of that finger that was extending north of Kirkwood. But key spots that I love to see that containment right around South Lake Tahoe. You can see almost double containment lines right there. We have black lines going all around Myers, all of South Lake Tahoe, all of Christmas Valley, and looks like we're picking up some of that black line just north of Kirkwood as well. So in the two main spots that we were following last week, where it was one of the most critical wildfire situations I'd seen, we've picked up a lot of containment in those areas, and doesn't look like it's nearly as big of a threat as we were seeing in the past. So again, lots of good news coming out of those areas. Now, with all that being said, I know I'm giving a lot of good news when it comes to the Caldor Fire. Pretty excited to see that how much it's calmed down. This was, at one point, it looked like this fire was going to go all the way to Nevada, just rip through South Lake Tahoe. So again, lots of good news, but we do still have large amount of evacuation warnings and orders. Can't possibly go over them all throughout the course of this video, but just a snapshot, anywhere where you see that red color right there, that is where there is still a mandatory evacuation order in place. So the fire by no means is wrapped up, and I'm certainly not saying that. I'm just saying it looks a lot better than during that red flag warning, and not very much smoke coming off of it as of right now. You can just actually tell that we're trending in the right direction based on the evacuation map as well. A lot of those areas around South Lake Tahoe, some of those key spots where we've picked up a lot of containment recently, you can see those transitioning into that green phase where there's repopulation, and then also seeing some spots transitioning to the evacuation warning in that yellow color, which again is better than a mandatory evacuation order, which is where that red color is. So good news coming out of the evacuation warnings and orders map. They're allowing some repopulation to take place as they clear out a lot of those dead trees. But again, still seeing some places where those mandatory evacuation orders are still in place. So always have to stay updated with this map. And again, I think almost all of the maps and links that I show throughout this video, I put into the description of the video, so you can find those links there, both while I'm talking and if you're watching this after the live stream. All those links will be in there, so you can access most, if not all, of the information that I show throughout this video. So when it comes to the Caldor Fire, some of the bad news that has come out is there were 1,000 structures destroyed, and I read the incident report for the Caldor Fire yesterday, and they were saying that they have now gotten information back from 100% of those damage assessment teams. So in the past, when we were looking at the damage assessment report, a lot of this information from the northern section of the fire, it was still blank on this map because we were waiting on those reports to come back. But as of right now, it says that they've gone in, identified 100% of the structures that they needed to identify. So this map is pretty well complete at this point. So I know if you're a local in this area, you're worried about your structure, this I know will be a great resource. You can again find this in the description of this video, and I'll just briefly show you how to use this map just in case you're new to my videos. You can zoom in to actually the street level all the way down here where you see those black structures. I'll turn the legend on for you. Where you see those black structures, that's where they reported no damage. And then where you see those red structures, that's where the damage assessment teams went in and they decided that the structure was more than 50% destroyed. And something you can actually do, click on the structure itself, look at the photo, and I believe right there it's talking about the structure closer to the photo. It looks like those other ones are less than 50% destroyed right there. But again, that's something you can do with this link if you are local and you're interested in finding out that kind of information. All of the damage assessment reports seem to be back at this point. So again, when it comes to that map, you can see why this was such a critical situation on the Caldor Fire, both when it went through Grizzly Flats and during that red flag warning when it took off towards Echo Lake. There was a number of days there where it looked like a very bad situation. So again, that's why I'm pretty excited to be reporting on the fact that right now barely looks like there's any smoke coming off of the Caldor Fire whatsoever. So lots of good news coming out of that one. But again, we were seeing that one, the heat detection is, there it is. So we are still seeing that one little heat detection. So I'm by no means saying that the Caldor Fire is out. What I'm saying is it looks a lot better than it had in the past, and we are just going to have to keep our eye on it as we move forward because, again, we have seen how these fires do like to flare back up again whenever some windier conditions come in, and it does look like we will have some southwest winds throughout this week, so certainly going to keep my eye on that fire moving forward. So quick sip of water, and then we'll move on to the Dixie Fire. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention is I'm just trying to get as much information out there as I can as fast as possible when it comes to the fires that we already kind of know about, including the Caldor, Dixie, Monument, River Complex, McCash Fire, and then I'm going to check the live chat, try to see if any questions popped up, and then we're going to start following those new fires, including the Hopkins, the Colony, the Paradise Fire, and then that's where this video is going to become a lot more interactive. I'll start trying to answer your questions in the live chat. We'll go on to Twitter. I'll see if you guys have sent any important posts about some of those new fires, any videos that you guys have. Again, you can send to my Twitter. And then by the time I get to the Hopkins Fire and the Paradise Fire, hopefully we'll just have a whole bunch of new information to go over so that we can all get up to speed on what's happening on those fires. Because, again, there are a number of developing situations going on right now. But before we get to those ones, I do just want to continue to go over some of the big ones. We just went over the Caldor Fire, which again is the 15th largest wildfire in the history of California. Now I want to get into the Dixie Fire, which is the second largest wildfire in the history of California, 960,000 acres. The big question mark is if it is going to overtake the August Complex as the #1 largest wildfire. This is something I've been going back and forth on for quite some time now because every time I count the Dixie Fire out, all of a sudden it flares back up again and grows 10 to 20,000 acres in a day. So I'm hesitant to get too excited about the current situation going on right now, but you can see just about the smallest amount of smoke that we've seen coming off of the Dixie Fire in maybe a month. The last couple of days have looked like this, where there is still some smoke in that northern area right there, but certainly not those days where we had 5 different pyrocumulus clouds coming off of the Dixie Fire in different areas. So certainly trending in the right direction. And then we also were recently covering all that flare up that we had on the eastern side right here. So I think it's actually was Old Station up here, but as of this fire perimeter, it looks like they were able to keep the fire out of that area for the most part. So that's some good news there. And it's also just good to see how much the Dixie Fire has calmed down recently. So when it comes to the acreage burned, again, we're up to 960,000 acres. Haven't seen very much growth recently. If we want to drive that point home, you can see the most recent fire days are in that bright red color right there. And we did have that one day, again, it jumped over Highway 44 right here. That was the last day on the Dixie Fire where things were looking very active. Let's see if we can see what day that was. I believe that was the 9th, where it grew 23,000 acres in one day. That was certainly on the active side, but you can see on the 11th grew less than 1,000 acres. So the growth is decelerating on the Dixie Fire, and it certainly seems that way from the satellite imagery as well. We had a couple of days there where, again, it was growing very fast to the north. There was a number of days there where it was also growing very fast in this eastern direction too, but in both of those spots, both yesterday and today, I would imagine, well, we know yesterday was less than 1,000 acres, and I would imagine today is less than 1,000 acres as well. We'll just have to wait for the recent fire perimeter data to come out to really confirm that point right there, but certainly looks like there's been minimal growth on the Dixie Fire throughout the day today. And when it comes to the Dixie Fire, you can see we're at 65% containment, which is the same as the Caldor Fire. I thought that number looked familiar right there. And if we want to see the number on or where that containment is located, you can see basically the entire southern edge of the Dixie Fire is fully contained at this point, all around Lake Almanor, all around that finger that extended towards Susanville. Much of that area that we were worried about that was pushing into Janesville at one point, seeing a lot of black line right there, which means it's contained. So in a lot of our key spots that we were following throughout the course of the Dixie Fire, again, I think I've been following this one for about 2 months now, but in a lot of the top spots that we've talked about, Quincy, Taylorsville, Chester, Lake Almanor, Westwood, Susanville, Janesville, we've picked up containment in all of those key areas, and it just looks like it's this last part of the Dixie Fire that's really hanging on, trying to flare back up again. Doesn't look like it did that throughout the day today, but we are going to have to keep an eye on it because, again, at one point, you can see where that containment line was right there. We actually had a firing operation going basically all the way from Lake Almanor all the way to the western edge of this fire, and it looked like the Dixie Fire was going to be stopped right about there, and then we had a number of hot, dry days in a row, and then one windy day came in, flared up an island on the inside of the Dixie Fire here. It was able to burn enough that it flared back up again, threw some spot fires over the containment lines, and then it took off 15 miles in one day. And then you can see how much it's been growing to the north ever since. So, again, lots of good news coming out about the Dixie Fire, but can never really say that this one is out until I think that first big rain comes in maybe mid-November. Again, that rain can't come soon enough. We did get a little bit with those thunderstorms, but certainly not enough to fully put the fire out. So definitely going to continue to watch the Dixie Fire, although things are looking good right now. Now, while I say that, there are still some evacuation warnings and orders in place. You can see that by looking at this map right here where you see that reddish orange color. That's where the mandatory evacuation orders are in place. The yellow color is the warnings. So although we're not seeing all that much smoke or that much active hotspots, there are still some warnings and orders in place. And the reason for that is because we've seen on this fire a number of times how it can flare back up again. Just interested to see if we're seeing any active hotspots on the Dixie Fire right now. So not showing any active hotspots. Again, usually we see squares like this where there's active hotspots, and good to see that we're not currently showing any of those on the Dixie Fire, but again, that's picking up heat signatures using a satellite in space, so there are still some smoldering areas on the Dixie Fire, just not enough to be currently picked up by that satellite. Now, when it comes to the Dixie Fire structures destroyed, again, Dixie Fire is number 14 on the most destructive wildfires in the history of California. If we want to see where a lot of that has happened, again, there was that one night where it went through Greenville. We had a number of other situations where we had growth and where you see those red structures there. We had that spot fire that flared up just south of Janesville. We did lose some structures in that area as well when it pushed into Janesville. So if you're worried about any of the areas around the Dixie Fire, if you're still evacuated and you're curious about your property, again, you can find this link as well as all the other links that I've shown in this video in the description of this video. And one thing you can do here is actually click on the structure itself and then look at a photo of what it actually looks like. And again, it is, I would say, it's sometimes helpful to actually click into this map and click on a lot of these photos and actually see what it looks like, because it's easy to just look at this map and think it's just, red and black dots on a map, but when you click on the photos, you do actually realize that that's somebody's entire life right there, all their memories, everything that they own. So again, thoughts and prayers always go out to everyone who has been affected by the Dixie Fire and is still affected by the Dixie Fire, because again, there are still a number of evacuation orders in place, and I know that that poses its own difficulties and challenges as well. So good news is we do still have a large amount of resources on the Dixie Fire, still over 4,500 personnel. So you can imagine those personnel right now, they don't want to see, this is true for the Caldor Fire as well, they don't want to see those fires flare back up again. They want to just get in there, put out all those smoldering hot spots, do what's called mop up, and try to make sure that the fire doesn't flare back up again so that they can lift all the remaining evacuation orders and get people back home. But again, we have seen it flare up a couple times in the past, so we're certainly going to keep our eye on it. So I do also just want to go over some of the other wildfires going on. Again, I believe this is McCash, River Complex, and Monument, where we're seeing most of the smoke that's being produced throughout the day today. So we're going to go over those in a second. First, I'll just take another quick sip of water. And then one thing I noticed as I was taking that sip of water is we are seeing more of that smoke coming off of these new fires that we have to talk about, including the Hopkins Fire, the Colony Fire, the Paradise Fire. I believe we also have Windy Fire. Those, I believe, started with that last lightning event when those thunderstorms came in, and it looks like those are flaring up today. And then we also have to follow the Hopkins Fire, which I have already seen some visual confirmation of some structures being destroyed and some new evacuation orders in those areas. So we're going to get to those in just a second. Right now, I'm just still going over some of the previous fires that we've talked about. And then I'm actually doing that on purpose so that more new information can come out about those fires, so that by the time it comes to covering those, we have more to go off of. Because again, when fires first flare up like that, it's hard to find information at first. But let's go up to northwestern parts of California right now. Looks like that's where a lot of the activity that we're seeing today is coming from. Let's look at the natural color fire. This will show some bright orange areas where we have the most active parts in California going on. You can actually see those new lightning fires right there. You're going to see those flare up throughout the day today. And then also going to see those flare-ups on the northwestern part of California in the last couple of hours as we get to the hotter and drier parts of the day. So let's just go straight to this map, because I believe that's going to be probably the Monument Fire right there. Yeah, that's the Monument Fire right there. It does look like that western edge to the left of Hayfork is once again flaring up. That's an area we've seen flare up a couple times in the past, although now we're seeing that one flare up as well. more towards the Burnt Ranch area. And I know if you're not a local like me, sometimes it's actually better to look at these on this map because it shows the cities a little bit better. So again, Hayfork is down here. We have Burnt Ranch up here, Hoboken, Hawkins Bar, and let's see where that other hotspot was. Looks like it's right directly east of that hotspot, so that would put it maybe right around here. Although it doesn't look like there's nearly as many structures in that area, so I think the key spots to think about on the Hayfork or the Monument Fire right now are those hotspots that we see around Hayfork and the Burnt Ranch area. And something that I do always have to preface when I show this map is that the hotspots, we've seen them be off by maybe a mile to 2 miles in the past. So perfect example right here, right there, it shows that the hotspot has moved into Western Hayfork, but I don't actually, again, I should be careful when I say this, but I don't actually imagine that that's the case. We've seen this a number of times in the past where it looks like a hotspot's directly over a city. That's more often than not just an error in the satellite data, but big disclaimer there because I don't actually know that for a fact. So always stay updated with local resources and all of that information versus anything that I say, because again, I'm only as good as the information that I have at my disposal. And in cases like this where there's been a new flare-up and it's a lot of new activity, you can't go off of the most recent fire perimeter data that was obtained by aircraft, even though that's much higher resolution. The second the fires flare back up again and change, if it's been growing for an hour or two, those maps don't really help you all that much once there is a developing situation. And that's where, unfortunately, we have to rely on maps like this, which, as we've seen in the past, aren't always 100% accurate. But when it comes to the Monument Fire, let's just click right here. I imagine that they still have a large amount of evacuation warnings and orders in place, especially in that Hayfork area. That's an area that we've seen persistently flaring up over the last maybe week or two. It seems like that area just won't quit. It looks like the fire itself is up to 210,000 acres, 43% containment. What I'm more interested in is seeing where they have that. Oh, they finally have a progression map. This is something that we hadn't been able to find in the past. And it was something that I was very curious about because this is one of the best ways to see how the fire has been growing. I imagine once this loads, we're going to see a lot of that growth that we had to the west of Hayfork recently. Yeah, so oh, this is more historic fire perimeters. Not so much a fire progression map. So I will continue to look for that fire progression map, but we do know that most of the growth has been to the west of Hayfork recently. One way you can actually see that is that's one of the top spots where the fire is still uncontained. It's also still uncontained on that northern section where we're currently seeing that one hotspot popping up right about there. It's that hotspot again. Should zoom out a little bit. Hayfork, Burnt Ranch, a couple of hotspots generally in the vicinity of those locations. Just going back to here, you can also see that it is still uncontained on that western edge where we currently have that hotspot right there. That's an area that has been growing a lot recently, but one thing I notice is how many of those black X's we do see where they do have some kind of containment lines in place, and all of the northern part of Hayfork is certainly looking good at this point. So Monument Fire is certainly one that we're going to have to continue to follow, especially that western edge right there. That seems to be especially stubborn, just keeps on flaring up right there. And also going to stay updated with that new flare up right there, because that again is close to where you see a lot of those orange dots, which represents where we have a lot of structures in that area. Now you also see a lot of the dots up here and right there. That one should be the river complex. I believe that one's going to be the McCash fire If we click on it, so yeah, we have the river complex right there. We'll just quickly look at the numbers for that one. Going to the river complex, that one is 185,000 acres, 21% contained. But I believe more of the smoke that we're actually seeing in Northern California, and possibly the most active wildfire that we are seeing, is, I would actually say, the McCash fire right now. That one, just looking at the GOES detections, and Monument Fire is certainly active right now too, but definitely seeing some of that on the McCash fire as well. And you can see a lot of those orange dots generally in the vicinity of where some of those hotspots are. Again, those hotspots, take them with a grain of salt. We've seen them be off by a mile or two, but we do have some of those hotspots showing up on the McCash fire where we do see some of those orange dots. So definitely going to have to continue to follow that one as we go forward. That one right now is 74,000 acres and 11% containment. And then the one other one that we saw grow a large amount, especially during that red flag warning, I believe it was the thunderstorms that came through, brought some really gusty winds. Can't actually find it when it's just the GOES detections, but it was the so not sure. There we go. That's what we're looking for, the Antelope Fire. We had a lot of new growth to the north here during that red flag warning, but looking at the GOES detections right now, looks like that has significantly calmed down from that one day where it flared up and took off to the north there. That one is remaining at 143,000 acres and 63% containment. So right now, I'm going to take a look at the live chat for the first time. Again, sorry if you've been posting any questions or comments in the live chat. I've just wanted to get all that information out about the fires that we already know about as fast as I could when it came to the Caldor, the Dixie, the Monument, the River Complex, the McCash Fire, the Antelope Fire. And now I'm planning on this being a much more interactive part of the video, because we're actually going to try to figure out what's going on some of these new fires in real time, including the Hopkins Fire, the Paradise Fire, the Colony Fire, and I believe the Windy Fire as well are some of the new ones that we're going to be looking into. So I see somebody says, any info on the Mendocino Fire? I believe that one is the Hopkins Fire, and we can actually take a look at that first. So again, throughout the course of this more interactive portion, I'll try to keep a better eye on the live chat. Again, this isn't something I'm particularly good at, especially when I get into the maps or trying to find new information, but I will try to keep an eye on if you guys have any new questions there. And then one other thing that you can do is actually, if you find any interesting posts or videos that you think would be helpful for this video, you can send it to me on Twitter at Holt_Hanley, and then I can bring it up and we can share it in real time in this video. But that is actually the first thing that we're going to do, is actually first let's get an idea of where this fire is. Again, you can see the little puff of smoke right about there. It's to the west of Lake Mendocino. You'll see it start to flare up throughout the day today. That smoke come off of right there. And interested to see if it's showing any current heat detections in that area. Let's go straight. Lake Mendocino. And right there you can see that is a much larger hotspot than I was seeing the last time I brought this up. But again, big disclaimer here. This map is very flawed. Many times in the past we see it look like this, and I know it makes it look like the fire has just taken over thousands of structures at this point, but always take this information with a grain of salt. It's picking up the heat signature from space. We've seen it be off by miles in the past, and it usually overestimates the size of the fire as well. So certainly not saying that the fire has grown that much and it's overtaken that many structures, but this is a useful map to look at because it does show where the fire currently is in proximity to the overall area. There's Lake Mendocino right there. So I did pull up Lake Mendocino on windy right here so we can get an idea of the conditions that have helped to flare this fire up. So again, Lake Mendocino right there. Zooming back out, you can see the winds were relatively gusty throughout the day today, and actually are still gusty, above 25 miles per hour, and they're blowing from the west, which will try to push that hotspot directly towards Lake Mendocino. Usually the fires move in the direction of the wind. And again, this is the Hopkins Fire that we're looking at right now. I believe they already labeled it on this map. Right there. Hopkins incident. And then if you zoom way in, you can see Lake Mendocino right there. Shows the little Hopkins incident. But again, this is where it's difficult to find information on fires this early. But it does look like Timothy just said thousands of acres and hundreds of homes are gone. I'm curious to see if they already have an InciWeb page for it, because InciWeb and Cal Fire are always the best places to get information on wildfires. Let's try Hopkins. Doesn't look like it. And second best place to get information on wildfires besides Cal Fire is Twitter. So what we're actually going to do is go Hopkins, and this was what I saw right before I went live. I always check Twitter to see if there's been any new updates since the last time I checked, and I was seeing video after video of structures being destroyed by the Hopkins Fire, and that's why this, I think, is the top story. It's the new fires that have started to pop up that we now have to follow. You can see that right there shows Marina Drive. Marina Drive right there again. Rob Maeda posted a 30-minute time lapse to 6:30 p.m. on the Hopkins Fire with far less activity now, but wind on site is pretty evident from the alert wildfire cam view. I think by that he's driving the point home how much that camera is shaking. Let's see what camera he's looking at, and then we can actually pull it up ourselves. So in the bottom, it's hard to see exactly what that is. We do know it's on alert wildfire though. And I think this actually sums up the situation going on that we've talked about throughout the course of this video. This is from Daniel Swain. Well, that was a short-lived California wildfire reprieve. New Hopkins Fire in Mendocino County is spreading rapidly in wildland-urban interface and is actively burning structures. Lightning fires in southern Sierra, those little hot spots that you see down there, especially windy fire, are taking off, and northwest California activity on existing fires increasing again. So he's talking about Hopkins Fire, those new lightning fires, and then also the ones we already covered, including the McCash, River Complex, and Monument fires as well. Right there, Hopkins Fire in Calpella, Mendocino. 2 additional tankers for a total of 4 and second copter. Fires spotted across the east side. Calpella Road originally began in the river bottom near the Moore Street Bridge. And he's looking at, let's see what camera this is. Looks like Ridgewood Grade. So let's do a little investigating here. Let's go to alertwildfire.org. Let's go to the beta version. I usually find that the beta version is a little bit faster. And I see somebody just said KNP complex is picking up. We will definitely look at that one right after we figure out some recent information on the Hopkins Fire. Again, this is a situation that's developing in real time where we're trying to figure out what's going on. So let's see. I wonder if this is in the North Bay area or the North Coast area. Before I click away again, that was Ridgewood. So let's see if we can find it here. Doesn't look like it, so it must be maybe North Coast. There's Ridgewood right there. We'll load up the last 6 hours to see what's been going on in the Hopkins Fire in the last 6 hours. First thing I notice as this camera is loading is all those dead trees in the area. Again, number of reasons for that. We had that huge drought from 2011 to 2017, which weakened a lot of the trees. Because of that, they were extra susceptible to bark beetles and disease. In the Sierras, I believe we saw 62 million trees die in 2016 alone. And then throughout that 2011 to 2017 drought, we had over 100 million trees killed by, I believe, just the bark beetles alone. So right there, you start to see it flare up. So let's zoom in there. And you can see it goes along with what Daniel Swain was saying in his tweet directly in the wildland urban interface. I'll be interested to hear how this fire started. But another thing I noticed is we were talking about how the winds were blowing at about 25 miles per hour directly towards Lake Mendocino. You can actually see that in this video as the smoke plume isn't going straight up. If a smoke plume is going straight up, that usually tells you that the winds aren't all that strong. Right there, you can see that earlier in the day, it was blowing directly towards Lake Mendocino with those westerly winds. And you can see how much it flared up in such a short period of time. So I loaded the 6-hour time lapse. That's what we're looking at right here. So somebody just asked, is Hopkins a lightning strike? I can't actually confirm what started the fire. I imagine it's still under investigation. I wouldn't completely rule out lightning strike because we did have those thunderstorms come through, but I do know where they have teams that go out wherever those lightning strikes happen. They usually have teams go out, and especially in areas like this where it's a wildland urban interface, and they get some teams out there and they put out any smoldering spots from the lightning strikes. I would imagine this, just given the fact that earlier in the day you notice we're not seeing any smoke whatsoever, and then all of a sudden it just pops up right there. I would imagine that this is something more human caused or some kind of accident that happened that flared this up. But again, complete speculation right there. But biggest thing I noticed is how much it did flare up throughout the day today. That's why we were seeing some of those videos of the new structures being destroyed. But the best thing that I'll say is that it looks like it has significantly calmed down already. So that is terrific news, that compared to what it looked like earlier, it looks like the fire has significantly calmed down in the last hour, which is, again, fortunate that this didn't happen a number of days ago when we had the red flag warning, because this could still be as active as we were seeing it 3 hours ago. It does look like we're seeing some red spots there too, so I imagine they were able to, if you look closely in this video, you'll be able to see some of those planes going in there and dropping some retardant as well. So looks like that one certainly flared up today, but starting to look like it's calming down, which is some very good news. But again, where the bad news is that the damage is already done. It looks like it destroyed a fairly large amount of structures, at least what we're seeing from the videos right here. South of Moore and east side, Calpella Road on west side, about 10 structures gone. So 10 structures right there. That one says 300 acres. So certainly critical situation that it flared up directly in the wildland-urban interface. And it seemed like it really started to take off for an hour or two there. But it's good to see that it's started to calm down already. So right here, Hopkins Fire has been incredibly challenging. Firefighters have flooded the area on the ground and in the air. They are making progress, but conditions remain dangerous. An evacuation center is now open, and I imagine there are a large amount of evacuation warnings and orders in place with that one. So that was one of the fires that we needed to update on, was the Hopkins Fire. Again, it's always hard to find out information when these things first flare up. What I can say so far is most recent update we were able to see was that it grew to 300 acres. I can confirm that 10 structures were destroyed, but that's about as much as we know right now. Again, we're just going to have to keep coming back to it to see if we can find some new information. And the other thing that I'll say is, just based on the Alert Wildfire camera, it looks like it's calmed down significantly in the last couple of hours. So I'd say that is at least some good news there, that it seems we're already trending in the right direction. In some of those cases, once the fire flares up, we just see it continue to go, and it looks like they were able to make some great progress on it relatively fast, which is impressive. But again, thoughts and prayers to the people who unfortunately have already lost structures with that one, and everyone who is currently evacuating at this moment. So again, that's going to be a fire I imagine that we're going to continue to try to follow as we move forward. Now, some of the other new ones that we have to talk about is Paradise Fire right here and Colony Fire right here. So I saw Lucy earlier said, is Hopkins a lightning strike? I can't confirm it, but I don't imagine Hopkins was a lightning strike, but I'm fairly certain that Colony and Paradise are both lightning strikes. When we had those thunderstorms come through a number of days ago, again, it did have some benefits that when those thunderstorms came through, they brought some nice clouds, which cooled our temperatures down. They also brought some moisture in, and that was actually really when we started to see things turn around on the Caldor Fire and the Dixie Fire. That moisture and those cooling temperatures really seemed to help things out, but there's always a flip side to the coin. It did start some new lightning fires, and we weren't seeing all that much activity on those lightning fires in the past, but as you can see zooming in here, they have certainly flared up throughout the day today. Two of the most active spots that we're currently seeing in California, Paradise and Colony Fire. So interested to see if they have InciWebs for these yet. Again, that's always the first place to go to look for information. Whoops. So, the other fire that we're interested in is the Windy Fire. Again, I believe that's relatively in this area too. There's the Walker's Fire. Is that the Windy right there? So don't see a name on that one. That looks like it might be in the right area to be the Windy Fire. So just zooming out, you see those two hot spots right there. It looks like that's our two smoke plumes that we're looking at right there. One other map that's always good to look at is if you go to Cal Fire, welcome to Cal Fire. They usually go to incidents. And thank you very much, John, for the super chat. Very much appreciated. I'll certainly enjoy a nice dinner, so thank you very much. But, okay, this was actually exactly what I was hoping that we would find. It looks, that's the French Fire, I believe. Right there, is that the Windy? Walkers. So it looks, again, like these are such new fires that we're not seeing any... They haven't had time to add them to the maps yet. We have Windy. Looks like two fires actually going on right here. That's what I believe is the Colony and the Paradise right there. So just zooming in here, I believe this one was showing it a little bit better. And we can also see if there's any cities around these areas. So you see those hot spots right there. That one is the Paradise. Most recent. Again, you can take these acreage burned with a grain of salt because usually it's some older data on this map. You can see a lot of those hot spots outside of the previous fire perimeter. Alrighty, so again, difficult to find information right there. So let's just go back to California Fire Scanner. That's usually my go-to place to get information. Again, you can also, there's a large number of accounts that I follow on Twitter. One thing that you could do if you want to follow the best wildfire accounts on Twitter is you can actually just go to my account, Holt Hanley Weather, and go to who I'm following. Because basically my entire feed that I follow is just all the wildfire information. For example, if I go to home right here, almost everything we're going to see is the most recent wildfire information. So if you're interested in getting some good accounts where you can find updated information, that's one thing that you can do. Go to my profile and then go into my following, and it's just a long list of, you can see almost every one of these is wildfire related. It's because in these videos, when it's a current situation like we're currently seeing on the Hopkins Fire, the Windy Fire, the Paradise Fire, and the Colony Fire, this is one of the best ways to find recent information. For example, the Hopkins Fire right there, that is one of the more serious situations going on in California right now where we do have some confirmed structures destroyed. Kent Porter, that's another great person to follow when it comes to wildfire information. And this is actually the worst video that we've seen yet on the Hopkins Fire. So I'm just gonna let this play for 39 seconds so you can see what is currently going on the Hopkins Fire, or at least what happened over the last couple of hours. Last time we looked at it, it did look like things had started to calm down, but there were a couple of hours there where it was absolutely flaring up, and you can see the damage that it caused as it did. Directly in the wildland urban interface, we had that large smoke plume coming off. I'll be interested to see what started this fire, because as of right now, I believe it's still under investigation. So I do know a number of people. Let's go Paradise Fire. So they're also calling this the KNP complex, and Sequoia National Park is now 1,000 acres, 0% contained, comprised of the Paradise Fire at 807 acres and the Colony Fire at 207 acres. Fire is backing down towards the Buckeye Flat campground per radio traffic. 3 copters on it as of right now. Right here, this is exactly what I was looking for. So the camera on this is Blue Mountain. So what we're going to do is go on over to Alert Wildfire and look for Blue Mountain. So we'll go to the beta version. Usually seems like it's a bit faster. I imagine it's in Sierra and Foothills region here. We're looking for Blue Mountain. That one looks like it has a smoke plume in it. Let's go back 6 hours. It looks like it started to flare up maybe 3 to 4 hours ago. So the way that we're looking up here, I imagine that one is the Paradise Fire, which is the bigger of the two. And then in that other imagery, it looked like we were also seeing something up here, which would be on the left side of this camera angle, which would, I think, be the Colony Fire. And I see somebody also just recommended another cam. I'll check that one out as well. Thanks for the recommendation. So just looking at this fire throughout the day today again, this I believe is the Paradise Fire right here. This was started by that round of thunderstorms that came through. We had a number of lightning sparks. We were actually following that in real time as those thunderstorms came through. We were tracking some of those lightning spots, but oh, and somebody says Paradise again. Again, that could be a point of confusion. Not Paradise the city. This is Paradise. They're calling it the Paradise Fire, but it's way down in the Sierras here. So so different Paradise. That was the first thing I thought of too. Right when I saw Paradise Fire, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. But looking at it, yeah, again, over the last hour or two, definitely looks like that's flaring up. Right there, you see that finally start to break through what looked to be a bit of an inversion throughout the day today. Really starts picking up in the last couple of hours. Looked like it was almost, and then right there, I thought that we were going to see that at some point. So, again, looking at the camera angle, you can see how it's looking up towards the northeast. And then if we match that with where we're currently seeing those hot spots. So you imagine the camera is right about here. So right here we have the Paradise Fire. Right there we have the Colony Fire. And if we want to just see that on this map, you can see the Paradise Fire really start to take off, and then the Colony Fire starts to flare up as well. So again, those are going to be some of the new fires that we have to follow throughout the next couple of days. It does sound like it was pushing closer towards some kind of campground. So we're gonna, actually we could see what kind of structures are in the area. So there's Paradise, Colony. Looks like the largest amount of structures are to the southwest of there. So let's see if we can get a town around here. Not even going to try to pronounce that. Potwisha, perhaps? I want to see what direction the winds are going, because I want to see if the fires, usually the predominant winds in this area are to the northeast. Just looking at the smoke today, we could see what direction the smoke was blowing throughout the day today. Looks like the smoke is mostly blowing towards the northeast. So yeah, the predominant wind direction is from, I might have accidentally said northeast, but meant to say the predominant wind direction is from the southwest. You can see that's what it was today with that smoke blowing up towards the northeast. That would actually be good news when it comes to where we see the largest amount of structures down here to the southwest. Those southwesterly winds would act to try to blow those fires away from where we see a lot of these structures. But we do also see some structures up here in the Sierra Nevada, so we don't want it to blow too far to the northeast. So just looking in there, again, that's directly over. Again, let's zoom in here, make sure we're looking at the right spot. So the fires should be relatively in this area. I want to see what the predominant winds are tomorrow to see where those fires might go. Looks like it's westerly winds, so similar to what we had today. And then as you get into the higher elevations, that's where you get some gustier winds up to 25 miles per hour. But directly in that, what looks to be a canyon, it looks like the winds are actually relatively weak throughout the day tomorrow. So that's at least some good news, although I do imagine that it's going to be fairly warm. Yeah, mid-70s, but then dry as well, especially up in some of the higher elevations. That's where you can get very low relative humidity. So definitely going to have to keep our eye on that one as we move forward. So to the south and east, there is a mountain community. Yeah, we're seeing number of structures throughout these areas. All those orange dots right there. That's where we have structures around these fires. So definitely going to be keeping an eye on those as we move forward. We can just continue to see if we have any other new information that's come out. Oh, let's try to find this camera. So that one is... It's annoying how Twitter doesn't allow you to take away this bar. It always crosses out the camera that we're trying to look at. Looks like it's maybe... starts with a T. So let's see if we can find it. And I believe that is the camera that we were looking for right there. So let's go to the 6 hour, see if we can see the time lapse of this. While that's loading up, we could just see if we can find any other information. Yeah, so a number of new fires that we're going to have to unfortunately add to the list. Again, we had a couple of days there where we had a little bit of a break. It was nice for me because I was able to actually get some good work done on my master's thesis, but also just nice for California overall because I think we hadn't really had a break on wildfires in maybe the last 2 months. So it was nice that we had that little bit of a break, but certainly seems like things are starting to flare back up again. The good news is when we look at the weather forecast, again, it's still going to be hot and dry over the next couple of days as we get into Wednesday. But then as we get into Thursday, we're actually going to start to see things cool down again. The reason for that, you can see there's this high pressure system that's just going to remain over California through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And again, it doesn't look very extreme, so I'm not expecting any of those excessive heat warnings that we've sometimes seen throughout the season. But it's still some hot, dry weather, so something to watch. And then as we get into Thursday, and actually the models seem to have been changing a little bit from what they were this morning, but we're going to have a little bit of a trough coming in Thursday right there. That'll start to cool temperatures down, so that'll actually start to really help things, hopefully calm things down if they've continued over the next 3 days with that hot and dry weather. So see a couple of comments in the live chat. Thank you very much, Brenda, for the super chat, and I also see Cynthia asks, what is your master's thesis topic? So right now I'm at San Jose State studying under the Fire Weather Research Laboratory. And for my master's thesis, the big question that I was trying to ask is we have these days where there's massive fire growth, where we see more than 10,000 acres burned. And we always hear about all the different factors that go into wildfire, whether it's temperature, winds, humidity, the fuel moisture, the fuel accumulation, all kinds of different things. But it's very hard to actually find out what is the most important. So basically what I did is I took all of the weather variables, all the fuel variables, all the topography variables that you could possibly think of going back to 2003, and I fed them into a machine learning model against the acreage burned so that it can predict whether it's going to be a small or large fire day. And then once that prediction is in place, you can actually see which factors are leading to that prediction. So it tells you what are the most important factors for those large fire days. So I'll hopefully have that wrapped up by the end of the month, and when I do, I will certainly do a video on that, on my whole master's thesis. I'll put a whole presentation together, because it is some fairly interesting results that I've come across so far. And I think machine learning will be a big tool that we're going to use moving forward to be part of the solution to this wildfire crisis. And definitely glad that we pulled up this camera, because I think this is a camera that shows the most active fire behavior throughout the day today. You can see it just start to flare up as we got to the warmer, drier parts of the day right there. And again, I believe all of these new fires that we're seeing in the Sierras were from that lightning event that we had with that last round of thunderstorms that did come through. So that one right there, I believe, again, I believe that was the Paradise Fire that we were just looking at, but the other big one that we have to continue to follow is the Hopkins Fire as well. So again, it's always hard to follow these fires as they're first happening. There's not a whole lot of information out. There's not usually incident updates yet, but we've seen a number of the cameras throughout the day today. We saw the cameras on the Hopkins Fire where it flared up, and unfortunately looks like it has destroyed a number of structures to the west of Lake Mendocino. The good news there is it looks like things have already started to calm down in that area. Unfortunately, the lightning fires look like they didn't lose any steam throughout the day today. If anything, they've picked up some steam over the last couple of hours. So when it comes to the Colony Fire, the Paradise Fire, the Windy Fire, and we'll continue to follow the Hopkins Fire as well, we're going to have to keep an eye on those as we move forward. The good news is it looks like the Caldor Fire and the Dixie Fire have significantly calmed down. Barely seeing any smoke coming off of those at all throughout the day today. Very little heat detections there. But we do still have those new fires to worry about, including Hopkins, Colony, Windy, Paradise. And then we have some of those older lightning fires that you can see remain active, including the Monument Fire, the River Complex, and the McCash Fire as well. So certainly lots to continue to follow. I know my reports have been a bit spotty recently because, again, I'm trying to wrap up my master's thesis, but given that we have some new fires that appear to be flaring up, I'll try to get back to my daily routine of doing these videos. So again, you can subscribe to this channel if you want to stay updated on all of those videos that I make. One thing that I do want to say is thank you to the patrons. Also, thank you to everybody who's been posting comments in the live chat and sending in super chats as well. Also, thank you to the patrons for, if you enjoyed the audio in this video, it's because I have a new microphone, so you can thank these people, and people have sent in super chats in the past as well for that. So big thing that I'll say as we go forward is this was a good and bad report today. I would say great news coming out of the Caldor and Dixie Fire, some bad news coming out for those new lightning fires, but especially on the Hopkins Fire, where we have some confirmed structures destroyed throughout the day today. So definitely going to have to continue to watch these wildfires as we go through the rest of the 2021 season. So you can subscribe to this channel if you want to stay updated with all the major wildfire events that we have until that first big rain comes in. Can't wait for that to happen. Unfortunately, based on how things are going this season, it may not be till maybe mid-November that ends up happening. So stay tuned. I'll be here every step of the way. I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.